On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, the Toronto Raptors are back in the Eastern time zone. And boy, oh boy, am I thrilled. We will dig into what happened for the Raptors on a 2-4 road trip. We'll dig into what comes next as they return home for a little bit of home cooking. And we also address the ongoing elephant in the room that is Pascal Siakam. All coming up today. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, January the 15th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. We're covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that's busted at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is free to join. It's in the description of the podcast each and every day. Would love to see you join us in there with our little Locked On Raptors listener family, a family that argues sometimes over what the Raptors should do about Pascal Siakam, but we always come back around to be friendly with one another. It's a beautiful place on the basketball internet, a hard to find type of place where not everything is toxic and mean all the time. All right, would love to see you there. Let's go. You can also find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. It's always appreciated when you support the show. However you support the show, don't report the show, please. And of course, you can find us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell, and you will never miss an episode when it premieres, which is perfect for you everydayers out there, of which all of you should be at this time. Though I understand if maybe you're not all that psyched to listen to a recap of that game against the Utah Jazz on Friday. But perfect. We're not really going to talk about the game specifically against the Utah Jazz on Friday, where the Raptors lost 145-113 in the lossiest schedule loss that ever schedule lost. We'll get into it a little bit here, take stock of the road trip that was, talk about Pascal Siakam and what lies ahead as they return home. The Celtics tonight, that's a toughie. And we'll do that all today with our pal Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet, from Cricket Canada, from the whole internet. Big V, how's it going, pal?
It's going great. I mean, we got some tennis on in the morning. Felix Auger-Aliassime is in a battle in the fifth set. So we got that going on. We got Cricket Canada stuff coming your way soon. Don't worry about that. And for now, I am happy to talk Raptors with you, bud.
Big V in his sicko element. It's fantastic. We love to see it. I love it for you very, very much. Hope the tennis is treating you well. All right, let's dive in. Again, we're not really going to focus on the nuts and bolts of the game against the Jazz. I think this loss was more or less pre-prescribed. A couple of emotional games in LA coming off of those. The last game of a road trip, usually the type of game that teams sort of let up for and are just like exhausted. They can smell the home cooking and the return home. We see this all the time. Not to mention they're playing at altitude. They're playing without Jakob Poeltl against a team with lots of very good bigs. And they're playing against the Jazz team that A, is red hot, and B, is maybe coached by a genius in Will Hardy. Oh my God, that guy can coach. And they're a team that throws a lot of junk at you that requires like high-level on-court problem solving, which when you're exhausted at the end of a 6-game trip, maybe you don't have the brain capacity to do high-level problem solving on the court. And so you get a 145-113 loss. So instead of diving into the nuts and bolts of that, we will just kind of take stock of the road trip as a whole. Vivek, 2-4 for the Raptors on the trip. I think they probably deserved better than that. They played very well, and I would say 5 of the 6 games, minus the first half against the Kings, but the second half was really inspiring. They're 3-4 overall since the trade. 6 of those 7 have come on the road. Perfectly fine way to start this new era, I would argue. But you lose a game like that and you start to think about some things. You had RJ Barrett kind of crashing back to earth, 2 of 9 in this one. No longer the most efficient player in the history of basketball. That is once again, of course, Nikola Jokic, who can't miss a shot these days. Big V, overall takeaways from the road trip. Do you feel like it was a success? Do you feel like it leaves you with more questions than answers, or more answers than questions about what this team looks like going forward?
I mean, I'm encouraged by what I've seen since the trade. Obviously, a bummer to end the road trip the way it did against the Jazz. But, again, you take that as a scheduled loss and you kind of move on. I think what encouraged me with this team was the show of like resilience and poise. You mentioned, the way the Kings dominated that first half and made every three. The way the Raptors fought back in that and were right in it in that final minute and had a chance, to win that thing. That was impressive to me. You think about, the Raptors played a great first half against the Warriors, probably the most complete half of the season. The Warriors did their third quarter thing, and it could have very easily have been, oh, here come the Warriors. But no, they punched right back at the very end of that third quarter, in the fourth quarter, early on to, kind of create that separation again. So that was another encouraging sign. You think about the calls that went against them in the Lakers game. You get outshot at the free throw line 23-2, 15-2 before the intentional fouling. The frustration was there, but it didn't affect their play. And they just kept going at it, and they end up losing by 1. So that's another encouraging sign. And then, of course, the Clippers. The way they fell flat against the Jazz, you wouldn't have blamed them if on the second night of a back-to-back, missing Pascal, missing Yak, if they just fell flat against a very good Clippers team. And no, they battled in that one too. And, Blake Murphy tweeted out how, it's been a long time since we've seen that annoying Raptors team that just won't go away. And so those are the biggest takeaways for me from this road trip, the resilience and the poise that was shown. It came flat against the Jazz, but again, that's bound to happen after a long road trip.
Yeah, I think all told, some pretty positive takeaways from the trip away. Again, 2-4, not what you want to see record wise. They do have to start like winning some games here if they, I think they have designs on, fighting for the play-in. They don't have much to lose, frankly. I think tanking to keep their pick is pretty unrealistic with the way the Grizzlies have now fallen into all sorts of states of disrepair. And, there just seems to be a very clear bottom 6 right now in the NBA. And, I guess you could try to fight for the 7th best odds, but are you really hoping lottery odds save you there? I'm probably not doing that. And also, there's incentive for this team to go and try to win basketball games, right? Like they have new guys. They're trying to figure out the fit. They're trying to incorporate. And I think there is plenty of runway here for them to play some meaningful basketball down the stretch. They have arguably their toughest stretch of the schedule behind them now. Obviously, still some tough games on tap, but a lot more at home than on the road over the next little bit here. I think you have to feel pretty good. Obviously, some of the positives of the trip as well. You discover Jontay Porter. He becomes seemingly a big part of the rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts against the Celtics tonight. We'll see. By the time you hear this, that may already be determined. But I think with the way Thad Young kind of came crashing back to earth on Friday against the Jazz, and with the way that Porter seems to be really fitting in, offering some playmaking from the center spot, 6 assists in that Jazz game is pretty awesome. I do feel like we're probably trending towards Porter being a starter for this team until Jakob Poeltl is back. And that's a really nice little bit of, again, found money, a guy that we did not really count on getting signed to a 2-way, quickly working his way through the G League and finding his way on the team. Like, this is the stuff that the Raptors used to do very well. And so to get one of those development stories be one of the through lines of this road trip, I think that sort of boosts up the success quotient a little bit as well, even with the record falling to 2-4. Were there any sort of concerns for you? If we're sort of, maybe we're doing like an impromptu good, bad, on the road trip itself, I guess right now. Anything that really popped up is like, okay, like, some nice fun stories. The vibes are great. All of this, new arrivals. But is there anything that's kind of standing out to you as like something that has to be addressed if they are going to convert these better vibes and better fit into more victories going forward from the road trip?
So I think the last time I was on here, I had mentioned how, with OG Anunoby gone, we have Scotty Barnes defending up top more often now. And I think we're seeing that be a bit of a problem for this team. And I think in addition to teams looking at the Raptors and saying, hey, there's no Jakob Poeltl inside, there's that belief that, hey, you can blow by these guys. I think Quickley, from what I've seen so far, is a pretty good team defender, especially when he's low. But one-on-one, there's opportunities for him to improve. I'll put it that way. And
Him, RJ, and Pascal got burned a whole bunch in that Friday game against the Jazz.
yeah, and so I think that's something that needs to be addressed, that needs to be improved in terms of the personnel on the team right now. That might just be an issue for this team in terms of the way they line up. And so unless you can find that premier defender out on the perimeter, yeah, I think this is going to continue to be an issue. And again, it does take away from Scotty's strengths. And so that's something that I probably look at and say is the biggest concern for me.
Yeah, I think defense in particular has to sort of be there as a big screaming red flag. Obviously, they weren't a very good defensive team before, and they have a little more leeway to be a not great defensive team because their offense is humming along at a top 10 rate right now. But they're 26 in defense since January the 1st over these 7 games, right? Like it's not exactly what you want. And yes, there was that game against the Warriors where I think Scotty Barnes did a kind of fantastic job sticking with Steph Curry, but guarding Steph Curry is a lot different than guarding your typical lead guard ball handler. Steph Curry's flying around off screens. It's a lot of sort of work on the perimeter, whereas, your more traditional lead ball handlers, you're having to stay in front of in pick and roll actions. And that is something that Scotty Barnes has not had a ton of success with as a lead point of attack defender. I
It's
would
also,
like to see, yeah.
just quickly, that challenge is also very different without Draymond Green and without Chris Paul.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. And look, I think right now with no Jakob Poeltl, there's an opportunity here for Scotty Barnes to man the 5 quite a bit. And I would like to see that a little bit more as they get back home, reset things, get some practice time. Maybe have Scotty feature a little bit more as your sort of traditional big man, because he's had really nice flourishes in that spot throughout this season. Obviously, Jontay is going to figure in there as well. But yeah, overall, the defense just kind of has to be better if this wants to be a serious team. And look, I don't think this is the nice thing about where we're at. Yes, they're 15-24. Yes, they're not a very good team right now, but there's not a whole lot in terms of stakes. They can kind of just like play ball, tinker, figure some things out. And ultimately, I don't think the end result of the season is going to tangibly change like my future outlook for the group or anything like that. Obviously, the deadline is still looming. We'll get to that in a sec here. But as far as just like tinkering, trying stuff out, putting guys in the best positions to succeed, I think there's a lot of runway here for Darko Rajakovic to try some stuff, because they're not playing for something that's, crazy high stakes. They get to the 9 seed, great. If they finish 11 or 12, like, okay, that's not the best. You don't love that, but I don't think the next 40 something games are really indicative of sort of what lies ahead. I think just the personnel they have on board, the Quickley, the Barnes, the Barrett of it all, that's going to determine sort of more the future outlook than whatever happens on the court, I think, down the stretch here as Darko Rajakovic tries to figure some things out and figure some things out on defense. This team certainly needs to do. They also need to figure out what the hell they're going to do with Pascal Siakam, huh? We're going to get to that coming up in just a second, as that continues to loom and sort of cast a cloud across all of what the Toronto Raptors are doing these days. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in all the land. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right. The NFL season is moving into the postseason right now, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel with that $150 in bonus bets when you place a $5 bet. You don't even have to win the bet. You just place the bet, and those $150 in bonus bets will be added to your account, and you can use them on all sorts of things within FanDuel's easy-to-use platform. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, and you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays that folks out there are playing. Again, I've said this before, I'm not much of a sports bettor, but when I do like to throw a little money down, it's usually when I'm in person at a game. And when I'm in person at a game, the live same-game parlays are a really fun way to juice that up. Maybe take the over on Scotty Barnes assists, take the over on Jontay Porter threes made. He's bombing away, baby. the whole 1 of 4 on Friday, but he's got it in him. He had a 2 for 3 night over the road trip and all that stuff. You can put together the same game parlays and have some fun in person by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon and making your first bet a layup. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, we continue on here. Your first listen of the day. Big V, Vivek Jacob, is here as we continue to dissect what happened over the road trip and what is to come for the Toronto Raptors now that they're back home for a little bit. 3 games this week, Celtics tonight, and then Heat and Bulls on a back-to-back. We were at home back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday. Rarely you see that, but that is what they've been handed. Okay, Big V, let's talk about Pascal, huh? Continues to be a big old elephant in the room, hanging over everything over the course of the road trip. I'd argue one of the most encouraging things was the way Pascal Siakam seems to fit with the new pieces that this team has on hand. And yet, all of the reporting, all of the scuttlebutt, all of the subterfuge continues to point towards the Toronto Raptors not seemingly having Pascal Siakam in their plans. If you want a full breakdown of this whole thing, go to last week's episode we did with Joe Wolfond. I thought we kind of covered the Pascal conundrum as well as you possibly could in a podcast form, so go listen to that. But he's playing well. He even against the Jazz in a game where nobody was efficient at all. Pascal Siakam, 27 on 8 of 14, 5 of 6 from 3. He's back up to like 33% from deep all of a sudden. He's having himself a really, really nice season, and we know the market factors at play. We know all that's tied up in the Pascal Siakam thing right now. What's your sort of read on the status, Big V? How are you feeling about where things sit with Pascal Siakam? This is not going away for the next 3.5 weeks until we get to the deadline, I'm sure. I can't wait for this to go away one way or another. I can't stand sort of the constant, well, what about this Pacers package of garbage? Stuff that goes on out there. Where are you at with the Pascal stuff? How are you feeling about where things currently sit with the Toronto Raptors' best offensive player?
I don't feel good about where things are at.
Me neither.
And it starts with the summer because for me, when Pascal became ineligible for the Supermax, and I think this is something that people are forgetting, when he became ineligible for the Supermax, that should have been the green light for the front office to say, thank God we avoided that. Mm-hmm. He is a regular max player. He's definitely not a Supermax player. We can give him this money. Now, whether or not ownership was just like, we don't want to give that up for Pascal, that's a different conversation in terms of who you put the blame on. But in terms of how it should have played out, that to me is what should have happened. And so for there to be no conversations over the summer.
Dude, they ghosted him. They just stopped talking to him.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. You would think the only reason you would do that is if you have a deal in place.
Yeah.
And now Pascal is just playing the hand he's been dealt. He's playing really good basketball, and he's saying, okay, well, you didn't trade me before December 30th. So now I'm just stuck with a best case scenario of signing a 2-year extension, which completely screws me over. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to any of these teams. I want that regular max extension. And he's just taking care of himself, which the Raptors, with the way they've treated him, he is absolutely entitled to do.
This is what every player should do, by the way.
And this sort of narrative that's been going around of just like, oh, Pascal has completely tanked his value by saying he won't sign an extension here and this and that. It's like, what would you do in his situation?
The team that you've been nothing but an incredible soldier for 7.5 seasons, ghosted you for an entire summer, hasn't paid you, talked about in vague terms about you being selfish at the start of the season, said that we don't have plans for you, basically without saying it. And now they're kind of sitting there like, well, what do we do with this? Of course you're going to prioritize yourself here. Of course.
So I'm very disappointed with the way things have played out. And now obviously you're getting these packages that are far below what he is actually worth as a player because of his contract situation. And so it still remains the best thing for the Raptors to extend him, even if it is to trade him down the line.
Yep.
That is 100% the best play you have right now. But it obviously looks like things aren't headed that way. You would think that the extension would have been done by now, if that were the case. And so, yeah, ultimately, like the one thing I've been thinking about is like, you think about, everything that has stemmed from the 905 and sort of that competitive advantage that the Raptors have had, and what a great example both Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam were of all that, and the rise that they've had from being G League champions to being in the bench mob to winning an NBA title, and then they were the ones that were kind of left to pick up the pieces. Now, obviously, they were given great opportunities as well, and then to potentially see both of them walk out the door for nothing. I think that's going to be a real stain on this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, they better not have Pascal walk out the door for nothing, I guess is sort of where they're at, right? Like you can't it's such hubris to go into a second summer with your most important pending UFA, going into a market where there's a max out there probably for Pascal. The Detroit Pistons clearing up a bunch of cap space yesterday with a very little deal. The Pistons have been mentioned as a Siakam team. I don't frankly get it for the Pistons, but hey, go nuts, Troy Weaver, I guess. Do your end of career and trying to save your job desperation moves, baby. Go off king. But yeah, it's you got the Pistons, you've got the Pacers, you have this leverage I think the Raptors have sort of had dry up. Their leverage has been, well, we can just max them. And if you're not going to give us stuff, we're just going to max them. But every day that goes by, they tip their hand as to, we don't actually want to max this guy. And so these teams are kind of holding the Raptors over a barrel, one would think, in these conversations, being like, well, we can just take this to the summer. Maybe the Pistons opening themselves up as a real target with the Pacers and the Sixers all being out there. Maybe there's too much risk now for a team to not trade for him ahead of the deadline and sort of count on their ability to sign him in the summer, as he is going to be probably the belle of the ball because of Kawhi Leonard, Paul George seemingly signing on long-term with the Clippers. Kawhi already has. I'm assuming Paul George is going to do that as well. And so maybe that works in the Raptors' favor here. There being too much of a broad market for him to land a max in the summer. But, I think ultimately their clear leverage play was, well, we can just sign him. And I'm not getting any sort of indication that that's what they want to do, even though, once again, he seems to fit pretty beautifully with the new players they have. And with an Immanuel Quickley, Scotty Barnes duo with Siakam running in the sidecar, I feel like you could do some pretty fun stuff as soon as next season. And yet they seem to be hell-bent on moving him for whatever it's going to be.
And just the last point I'll make on the whole leverage thing and like the stuff that's being said about, oh, Pascal's not doing right by the franchise or this and that. If the Raptors had just got an extension done in the summer, Pascal would pretty much be in the same boat as DeJounte Murray. Do you see anyone caring about what DeJounte Murray wants? No, because guess what? The Hawks got an extension done with him. He's going to have a 4-year, $120 million extension that kicks in. And so when he's involved in all these trade rumors, it's just like, yeah, are the Hawks going to agree to this? Or is whoever they're dealing with going to work with this? And it all works because it's like, hey, this guy's already got an extension inked. And if you just played your hand right, even if deep down you felt like you were going to trade this guy, you would have had max leverage if you just got the extension done in the summer. And now you're in this situation where you could end up walking down the exact same path that you did with Fred a season ago.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that, man. Like, if this goes through the deadline and it's not resolved one way or another, like, I don't even know. Like, what do you say at that point? It's just, it seems to be one of the more confusing, erratic cases of star player management that I can recall. It's really bizarre. We'll put a pin in it for now. because it's making me frustrated and mad. And I don't want to start my week that way, man. We'll come back on the other side. We will round it out with a little look at what's on tap. 3 games this week. At home, of course, the Knicks are on tap on Sunday as well, or Saturday. I don't know, but a couple of big games coming up this week. Celtics, Heat, Bulls, as we dig into the return home, some home cooking, what we're hoping to see. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our dear friends over at GameTime, the single best way to go and buy tickets for the sporting event, concert event, theater ticket show. Theater ticket show? That's not a thing. But either way, you can find tickets for all the stuff you want to go to at GameTime, and they make it totally free of guesswork. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly where you're going to be and what to expect when you arrive. No surprise pillars in front of you blocking or obstructing your view. All in prices. We'll also show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. None of those hidden fees slapped on at the back end. You can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. And GameTime, of course, has the GameTime guarantee, which means you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. I've used GameTime a ton. I got tickets to a couple of sporting events in Seattle over the summer. I'm constantly perusing for last-minute Raptors deals. They are the place to go for last-minute tickets. So go right now to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we close it out here. Big V, Vivek Jacob is here. A reminder, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is our all-day streaming channel featuring all of the Locked On national shows covering the biggest stories in sports, as well as the local shows covering whatever's been going on from the local angle. Of course, lots of football games yesterday and today over the weekend. If you want to go catch up with your favorite team that lost in hilarious fashion or won triumphantly, you can go check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7. You'll probably find that team covered over there. So go check it out. Okay, Big V. Coming back home. It's nice. It's been a while. We get to watch games at normal hours and not have freaky sleep schedules all messed up. It's a beautiful thing. I'm very relieved. Those 10:30 starts were driving me a little bit nuts. But yeah, we have now a game tonight against the Boston Celtics. That should be a tricky one, as the Boston Celtics are a wagon. We know this. Without Jakob Poeltl, I'm curious about that matchup in particular. We can dive into that. Like I mentioned off the top, though, they're 15-24. And as much as the vibes have been great, they got to start putting some wins on the board here. They're a couple games back in the loss column of the Bulls for the 9 seed. The Hawks are, they're the Hawks. They're not very good. They're pretty easy to keep pace with, but Jalen Johnson's popping off. Trae Young is actually playing defense for the first time in his life. So there's some sort of potency there, one would think. The Nets, I think, are awful. Look, this is kind of a sad race for the 9 seed, but like I said on my show last week, embrace it. It's fun and stupid. Let's dive into this really ridiculous 9 seed race and really kind of attach our emotions and feelings to it. I think that's what sports fandom is frankly all about. I compared it to watching teams fight for 17th in the Premier League, which is, there's a fan enjoyment element to that as well, on top of all the existential dread that surely comes with being a Brentford fan. But Big V, sort of going into this week, is there anything you want to see in particular? Is there, we can kind of take a big picture view here. Is there a matchup in particular that interests you? Is there a deployment you'd like to see from Darko Rajakovic? Is there just like a general theme you want to see? Is it just containing perimeter drivers on defense? You can go any way you want here. What are your hopes and dreams for this 3-game homestand against the Celtics, the Heat, and the Bulls Monday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Don't embarrass us on national TV. TNT game Thursday, second night of a back-to-back.
Raptors Bulls on a Thursday, man. What was the NBA thinking? What were they thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, you go into that Miami game. Likely no Jimmy Butler. He's played 1 game since December 18th. Mm-hmm. He hasn't played a game yet in 2024. Jaime Jaquez picked up an injury, and obviously he's been great as a rookie. And so he might be out for a little bit. And so you go into that one, you should be focused on getting a W in that one. Obviously, Boston's going to be tough. Chicago has played better since Kobe White went off, but that's going to be a competitive game. And then I know we're just talking about these 3 games, but we got the big one after that: OG Anunoby and the New York Knicks.
The
So
Knicks, who are number 1 in defense and completely demolishing teams with OG Anunoby. You love to see it, frankly. Shouts to OG, just the plus minus god.
yeah. So I'm probably, in terms of where this team is at and taking steps forward, I'm probably evaluating, the Heat game without a couple key guys, the Bulls game and the Knicks game, more than I am, like if things don't go well against Boston, I'm not gonna go too crazy.
Yeah. Well, so I'm fascinated by the Boston game. Obviously, like they have not performed well against Boston this season. Are they 0-3? I think they're at least 0-2. They have
Well, they
not
had that
played
fantastic
well.
first game of the play-in tournament where it went down to the wire.
Right. Oh yeah, I was at like a wedding or something during that, so I kind of missed it. But
Sorry, not
um
play-in, in-season tournament.
that's right. Yeah. Man, the in-season tournament, how like fleeting that was as a Toronto Raptors fan. Didn't even feel like we were a part of it. Just last team to play, first team out. Like, okay, sweet, fun. It's like being one of the lower rung squads in group H of the World Cup. Just kind of getting demolished by Brazil in your first game and not having a shot. But we are all Costa Rica. No, I'm fascinated about this matchup against Boston without Jakob Poeltl. We've seen Poeltl be kind of a strange piece in these games against Boston. Like they're giving him tons of space. He at times has been able to kind of bully Kristaps Porzingis for some buckets, but for the most part, I think his sort of existence on the floor, and this was obviously before the trade, so the dynamics are very different now, but before the trade, it was very sort of, all right, we're going to give Yak all the space in the world. We're going to close off every other passing lane. All your elbow stuff, haha, good luck running that because we're just not going to allow those passing lanes to develop. They're a really good team. I do think without Yak is sort of an interesting matchup, and I'm curious to see, like, can Scotty Barnes sort of go toe-to-toe with Kristaps? Is Kristaps going to go post-up mode where he's been so bloody efficient the last couple of years? Is that something where they sort of get into the trap of sending doubles and scrambling all around? They haven't been super aggressive with double teams and stuff like that under Darko Rajakovic, but maybe this is the type of game where they lean into that a little bit more. It's a fascinating one. I think there's a lot of fun wrinkles with this matchup without Jakob Poeltl if they are going smaller against the Boston team that is big, but also like they're so wingy. They're kind of, they resemble the Raptors a little bit in terms of their sort of across the board length. Derek White's obviously fantastic. He's been ridiculous. Jaylen Brown does his thing. I don't know. I find this matchup to be fascinating without Jakob Poeltl, even if the Raptors are severely outgunned, probably. I think there's probably some fun stuff they can do to try to turn the Kristaps and Al Horford of it all kind of against the Celtics. Luke Kornet's not going to be out there dominating Jakob Poeltl this time around. Thank God. That was ugly. I don't know. Any stray thoughts on this matchup with Boston in particular? I think it could be kind of a fun one. And hey, man, with the way the team has played, the vibes they've had, the Jazz game notwithstanding, I'm not putting it past them to kind of come home and just sort of punch the Celtics in the mouth a little bit. Like they've shown that they have a little bit of punch to them. So, Boston's really good. They will probably win this game, but I'm pretty intrigued by what this matchup could entail.
Yeah, matchup wise, there's some fun stuff to look forward to. You look at, the wingness of it all, and you got Pascal and you got
I'm ordering wings for tonight's game just in honor of the players on the court.
Yeah, and Scotty has had some pretty notable games against the Celtics.
Sure has.
Maybe more so on the road, but yeah, it'll be cool if we could get a fun matchup between, him and Tatum. And I think we could have some fun moments. Again, I'm not getting my hopes up. Boston, they just look incredible. And, we talked about, hey, last game of a road trip. Well, the first game back usually presents some issues too. So we'll see.
Sure does. That is one of the weirder sort of commonly held truths in the NBA is like, oh, first game back from a road trip, you stink. It like always seems to be true. Players talk about it. Alvin talks about it on the broadcast all the time. I have no unearthly clue why that's a thing. But it is. So, I guess we'll deal with it. It should be noted the Celtics, while 19-0 at home this season, 11-9 on the road, so beatable on the road if you get them on the right night, I suppose. We'll see. I'm pretty excited for this one. Usually, I look forward to Celtics games with a creeping sense of dread as we get closer to tip, but this one, and look, this is nothing against Jakob Poeltl. They very clearly miss Jakob Poeltl on this team. There's no doubt about it. One of the big takeaways from the road trip was, wow, Jakob Poeltl's a valuable basketball player to making this whole thing work. Probably would have had a lot better success peeling apart that Jazz junky ass zone on Friday had they had Jakob Poeltl's passing from the middle. But alas, they did not. I think this, I don't even know where I was going. This matchup's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I look forward to breaking it down on tomorrow's podcast as well, where I believe we'll be joined by our pal Assad Alvi, which it's been a little while since we had him on the show. So you have that to look forward to. All right, Big V, we'll leave it there. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
So I'll be doing general NBA stuff for Sportsnet still, so you can still look forward to that. I recently did like a top 10 trade targets piece that you can check out there. And then later this week, I should have something on how the Knicks have looked so far with Mr. OG Anunoby. I probably have that lined up for right before the Raptors play them.
It's a 3-word long piece. They look great. I will read every word of it.
Yeah, besides that, you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob. And again, all cricket fans, I will be writing for Cricket Canada over the next 6 months leading up to and including their first ever appearance at the T20 World Cup. So pumped for that.
I'm pumped for that for you, my friend. That's sick. We're going to leave it there, though. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. Like I said, Assad's going to pop by, I think, to talk about Raptors Celtics. Should be interesting. If nothing else, hopefully they don't get pasted again. It would be a real shame to have all those great vibes and then 2 straight nasty losses kind of nuke them all. Vibes are a fickle thing in this here NBA. Let's hope they can be maintained. Either way, appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. In the meantime, extend Pascal Siakam now. Bye-bye.